Mariona is actually on a wider team within the association that is looking at the SEO of the website, sort of right across the board. So not just for education, but right for the market practice and regulatory policy guys as well across the communication. So I think, Mariona, I might hand this one off to you if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, the thing is, our website has existed for several years, and because the broader association is not for profit, I don't think SEO was something that we looked at. So it is the first time that we look at it as a team, and we found there is a lot of information on our website, like we said last week. And so there's a lot of cleansing to do. So at the moment, we're at the very early stages of looking at what are the keywords that we need to have in the different topic areas, education being one of the relevant ones, because obviously the department itself is not for profit. So we are lucky that we get a lot of attention on that, but we're looking at the key terms. And I actually was just exchanging emails with Daisy this week as to how vague or specific the terms should be. And it was interesting. She said, you want to keep them vague to capture a wider audience, but you also need to be specific so that you've got a higher chance to rank higher. So that's when it comes to the terms there. But then I think as well, across the board, we're going to have to look at the keywords that we use in the contact page, in the content of the pages. And then I think one thing that I don't know how we're going to sort out, but again, we're sort of externalizing this, is the links to other pages. Links to internal pages might be an easier one. And that's like I said, we're very much at the early stages. So like Alice said, I find it's very technical, and it's also very broad. Like, it affects a lot of things. It's the gut feeling I'm getting. So yeah, I was looking forward to this session. And when you said, oh, we're going to do SEO today, I quickly texted my colleagues on that team saying, today is SEO. So if you can, follow live streamed. If you can, I'll send you the video. So, yeah.
That's right. So look, a couple of things you said there, and Alice said as well. So yes, it is technical. And today I'm going to try and give you enough knowledge so you can kind of get a handle for what's going on, in terms of technical SEO, and there's a huge amount. So obviously I can't give everything, but I'll give enough so that you can know how to ask the right questions. And then the other thing you said was that it is quite broad, and the truth is it is become enormously broad, as by the end of this we'll see, because I'll sort of show a couple of examples. And it touches in on everything. So for me, the way, like the reason why this course is beneficial for people like yourselves who are into marketing, but you're not on the road to becoming an SEO specialist, is because it impacts content so much. And it's almost like a bit of SEO knowledge is sort of, it's a key, it's going forward, I think, increasingly going to become a key skill for any marketeer who's got anything to do with creating content, which most marketers do. Should we come to Hannah next?
Sure. Sorry, it always takes me a while to find the mute button and unmute myself. So I'm quite similar to Mark, to be honest, in that I know what it is and I've got sort of like a basic understanding of that, but I haven't ever implemented it myself. And I know your team, Elliot, are doing some work on it at the moment. So it's slightly different for us as well, because we've got the website which has just gone live, but it's a mirror of a previous website that we had, and at that point nothing had been done on it, so we're looking to focus on that, but in terms of what we have done and my understanding of it, it's very, very minimal, to be honest. So really pleased that this is the session for this week. I'm looking forward to figuring out more about it, other than just what the letters stand for.
All right, cool. We'll definitely be able to do that, Hannah. So let's, Flavio and Stefania, I'm guessing you guys haven't had much direct input because you don't have access to the site, but in terms of your knowledge of SEO, what does that look like?
No, I mean, yes, again, we are being prepared. I mean, all the guidelines are given by the head office, so we have really little room to, I mean, we adapt it to our country. So for example, UK, but generally what we receive from Rome is already quite defined. I mean, so especially for the Western country, I can say culturally very similar. So of course, our colleagues in China and Japan, they adapted even more for their markets. But yeah, it's very little. I mean, yeah, we change very little, Stefania, don't we? I mean, for the content we receive from Rome. I mean,
I think that Anna said it all for me.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. I know what it means, but I never actually put it in practice.
That's okay. Then that's okay. We'll make sure we cover it for everyone. Just to clarify, Flavio, because international SEO is a thing. So are you saying?
Okay, sorry.
Rome,
then I need some more information as well.
No, just so I understand.
Yeah.
So Rome will send you content, and it's up to you to put it on the UK and Ireland local. It's up to you to upload.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, now we are doing a campaign that it has to be standard, uniform. I mean, all of it globally. So of course you adapt it. So for instance, we choose the influencers who are going to implement the content of an Instagram campaign, because we know the influencers of this country. And in Brazil, they're going to choose their own. But the hashtags, the visuals are given by head office. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Look. So thank you. Right. Let's get into it now. I'll share my screen. I'll share We'll start off. We'll start off relatively easily, and then we'll drop in some questions, and then we'll go get a bit more technical, and then we'll end with another group session. Okay, so thank you for sharing your thoughts there. There's a bit of there's a bit of a mix here. Some people are very new, some people know a bit, but we'll make sure we cater this for all of those people. So search engine SEO stands for search engine optimization, and when we talk about what it is, when you just to absolutely clarify, whatever you type into a Google search engine, normally you will get some ads, and those ads will always appear at the top of the search results. And we will be talking about Google AdWords PPC, so the advertising component of search marketing. That's different. We'll talk about that, in a week or two's time. What we're talking about here is search engine optimization, meaning the organic stuff. So just put really simply, the work that we do on our site and the technical structure of our site and the links back to our site, those three things together, all of them together, and lots more underneath those things, determines where our individual pages and or site will rank for given search terms. And obviously typically we'll rank for a large number of search terms, and some of them will rank very high, some of them will rank very low, some of them will be a bit in between. And the job of SEO, broadly speaking, is to increase the number of search terms that we're ranking for, and ideally maximize the number that we're ranking for in the first page. And then beyond that, the next KPI is maximize the number that we're appearing for in the first three results. And then a fourth KPI typically for this project will be how many position one results do we have. So again, while we're on this screen here, so whatever search term you type into Google, you will always get 10 organic results. So there's just two here showing on the screen, but it will always go down to 10. And then after you get the 10th natural result, you might even have some ads down the bottom as well, but you'll only have 10 organic natural results in. And then you have to go to the next page, and then there's page 2 results will be 11 to 20, and page 3 will be 21 to 30, and so on. And so when we talk about the position, it's quite often referred to as a SERP, S-E-R-P. So SEO specialists will refer to SERPs, and that's what they're talking about. It's just the position. And so, as I mentioned, we want SERPs between 1 and 10, which means we've got sort of first page 1 visibility. Because what you find is when you look at click-through rates, if you're in position 1 in the organic search, it might be up to 50% of people of a search will click through onto that page. If you're in position 10, you'll be down to sort of 1 or 2%. and then obviously you've got variations in between. So there's a material benefit to being further up the search results.
Elliot, can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
And if you have this in a future slide, we can just defer until then. But when we're identifying these keywords, these search words, should that be driven by our content, or should we be writing content that drives the words, or is it a parallel process?
Well, there's a bit. You're kind of right in both ways, but there's a bit missing before that. The keyword research, everyone's heard the term, but really the reason why you do it is to find out what people are searching for in your market who look like your target customers. So you do that bit first, then you write the content, and then you monitor those phrases that you're monitor those phrases you're targeting, and you do everything you can to improve them. But in terms of the practice of SEO, it's significantly content led, but as we'll see in some further slides, there's back-end technical stuff, and then there's off-site stuff. And those latter things, I suppose, let me just say this before we get too deep into this, just to be clear, and it doesn't, wherever your agency is, Mintvist, another agency, a freelancer, in reality, these days, if you're going to compete seriously for SEO, you do need an agency of some kind. An agency or a freelancer, depending on how you're set up, but you can significantly improve the power of your SEO if the people who are responsible for creating content have insight and some level of understanding of the strategy, and B, have some understanding of how on-site SEO works, and that's what we'll be talking about going forward. Did that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so in short, SEO allows our content to be displayed in relevant search results. The relevant thing is really, really important. Obviously, we want to drive the right traffic to our audience, not just any people. This is a bit of a catch-all statement, but I suppose the reason this is up here is I wanted to say, when you look at most websites in the world and most successful websites in the world, the lion's share of traffic that ends up on that website will be organic traffic. Now, we're going to talk in a few slides time about the difference in branded search and non-branded search, but it as a collection of traffic, it's typically the largest. And an SEO, if it's done correctly, can be like enormously powerful, like really, really powerful. And so it's not to say that you do it instead of social media, or you do it instead of paid search, or instead of other activity. It's an and play here. And that's the case for most of what we'll be talking about across this course. I suppose that, particularly if you've got a really large site, it's a medium and longer term play. If you want instant results, it's advertising. Okay, so if we type in, what in this case Adidas Samba's size 15, what's actually happening here is the Google algorithm is continuously and ongoing. It's just constantly indexing every website and every page in the world. For really, really busy websites, like, for example, the BBC News or the Guardian or the Daily Mail, these types of very large websites that are constantly updated, they will be indexed multiple times per day. For a website like minttwist.com, it might be indexed once a week. For a website that's more static, it might even be once a month or anything in between. But when the algorithm is indexing a site, what's essentially doing is going into the home page and then following every internal link down and scanning every page and reading the content, meaning in the broader sense content. I'll talk about the on-site content. It's the content and the tags, essentially. And it's deciding what each and every page, what phrases it's related to, and it's putting in its index, this page is related to this phrase, and it's in this website, which is related to these topics and subjects, and obviously phrases underneath that. And altogether, the website is And so that's the content side of things. There's a technical element too, where it will say this website is technically sound and it's structured well, therefore, you know, and it's fast and it's clean and it's compliant with HTML and it works on mobile and all of these tick boxes. And so it will get a technical score. So you've got an on-site score, a technical score, and then the off-site thing, you know, just to give you a really brief history lesson, when Google first started, the reason it wasn't the first search engine, but the reason why it was kind of techies, in Silicon Valley, and I was one of them, who were in their 20s and working in Silicon Valley, and they really liked Google because it wasn't just a list that was manually curated by Yahoo employees. Yahoo was the big search engine at the time, and Lycos and others. It was an algorithm, and all the algorithm really did was say, I'm going to rank this website based on how many other sites link to it. And if site A has 5 links to it, I'm going to give it 5 points. And if site B has 3 links, it can have 3 points. And C only has 1 point. I'm going to list those sites by categories. They manually categorize them in the order of how many backlinks they have. So obviously the algorithms developed, you know, insanely, and since then, that was 20 years ago, and it's now looking at way more things than that. But very broadly, it's a direct correlation between how many backlinks you have into a site. It's an indicator for Google to say how authoritative a site is and or a page is for that particular topic and keyword group. Yeah, so that's the offsite bit. Okay, and then a couple of other sort of just things to talk about. So we talk about short tail SEO, which essentially means 1 or 2 word phrases, and then long tail SEO, which might be 4, 5 or even 6 word phrases. And very broadly speaking, if you've got 1 or 2 word phrases, typically they'll have way more people making those searches because it's more of a generic search. But at the same time, you'll also have more websites that will be competing for those, for those general phrases. The long tail phrases, they'll be more specific, but there will be lower competitions. There's more opportunity to rank for relevant long tail phrases. So again, really broadly speaking, SEO is about getting the balance between relevant long tail and the most important short phrases. So, to give you an example, for Richmond, university in London is a very generic, very competitive phrase. American university in London is the sort of phrase that is perfect for Richmond because that's what it is. It's longer tail, it's more specific. Users who are entering that search are going to be more likely to convert. So relevant long tail and relevant, obviously, generic phrases, we've got to get the balance between both of them. Sort of related to that in a sense, and this is where SEO strategy starts to bleed into content strategy, because when in week 1, you'll remember we were talking about awareness and conversion and users going on this journey around this research journey in a sense before they hopefully choose to purchase our products or services. And they will be typing in different things when they're at the top of that funnel, to different things when they're middle of the funnel, to different things when they're actually ready to make a decision. So, if I'm a potential buyer of a holiday in Malta or a summer holiday in the south of Italy, then I might start off researching winter sun or winter sun in Europe, or where to go for winter sun in Europe, and I might end up, hopefully with southern Italy in this case, but Malta, it could be wherever we think. And then related to that, you've got these intent phrases. So if we're sort of anything to do with selling products, if I'm using the word buy in association with a relevant search phrase, then that's high intent, so we call high intent. And so again, that's a really great phrase to be ranking for, if you're in e-commerce, if you're an e-commerce setup. And there will be intent phrases that are relevant for all of our websites. And obviously, as you come down the funnel, typically typically you'll get smaller numbers of searches, but they will convert at a higher rate. Okay, I've thrown a bit at you there. In the next section, we're going to go into more detail. But before I go there, I just want to check in, with each of us here, and just get a feel for what sorts of search phrases, are relevant for your organizations. And feel free to ignore that question and just ask your own one, as always, or make a statement.
Elliot, could I just ask a quick question before we go on to that, please? It was just trying to get my head around how it works. So obviously you start to rank the score, you start to rank higher as and when people are searching for a particular word and then ending up on your site. But is that on a unique visitor basis, or could I sit here all day, every day and click through onto my own page to boost my own ranking with the words?
Okay, no.
Obviously I've got a job and I won't be able to do that, but just in principle.
Yeah, so I suppose the starting premise is not exactly right. So it's not, SEO is not saying if lots of people hit my site, then I will rank number one. That is just one index of literally thousands. So that it is true that Google is looking at how many people click through onto your site from a search, and that is a significant indicator to how relevant that site, that page is for that search. But if you, let's say, because Kinte Join's a relatively new site, and so if I'm typing in carpooling at this stage, it's going to be not on page one, it's going to be further down the list. So you typing in that search phrase and then going to page 4 and then clicking on it, you're going to be doing that for literally decades. You will never get to the top just by doing that. You have to do all of the other stuff, which is the on-site stuff, the technical stuff, and the off-site strategy as well. And in this next section, there's an infographic that sort of shows a lot of the indexes, and that will hopefully help you. But it just in this period of time, I'm going to give you the big chunky stuff, and those are the three: off-site, on-site, technical.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
No worries. Flavio, I know you're not working on the SEO, but what sort of phrases in terms of the B2B audience do you think are relevant for Italian tourism in UK?
For the B2B, what could it be? We never even thought about that. What could it be? I mean,
sorry, I didn't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
I suppose the better way to ask the question is when the intermediaries are speaking with you, what is it typically that they want?
Well, we speak B2B, we speak with the operators as well as the media, so the press. So normally the operators ask us, of course, I mean, at the moment now, of course, everything about Italy and opening restriction and these kind of things. Generally, if we put them in contact with Italian operators or our events, so it's not about Italy itself or geographically or holidays, because they know Italy, so they're selling it. So it's not that they're not looking for information about the country. It's more about the trade in Italy, on who they can contact to in order to do business and these kind of things. As far as the press, Stefania, what do they ask you normally? I mean, what do you reckon?
Well, obviously all information regarding tourism in Italy. So keywords would be tourism, Italy, Italian, cities that, Rome, Milan, holidays in Italy.
I think you're right, Stefania, with these examples you just given. I just realized it was probably a bit of a silly question for me, because the truth is the B2B players in the UK would know who you are and they know how to find you. So SEO is probably less relevant for that side of the business, much more relevant for the consumer side.
They would have to search really for us, Italian Tourist Board. That's
and they know where to find. For the consumers, if you feel like you've got inspirational, content, which I know you have, or there's particular regions of Italy which you want to promote, which I know you do, then that is a better example of an SEO play for you guys. Yeah. Okay. Alice and Brian, what sort of phrases are most important for you guys?
Well, it's as you already said, it's like University London in London, or American University in London. Yeah, studying in London or study abroad. It depends again if you target UK, EU, or US. It's slightly different, and then it again also depends if you target UG and PG as well, or scholarships as well, for example. Yeah, just to keep it very simple. And what I wanted to say.
We also do some around the degrees too. So we'll use like undergraduate or graduate or bachelor's.
Yeah,
or
course,
bachelor
like
arts, BA, BS,
course specific, course specific search terms. If it's accounting, if it's finance, or is it marketing?
Yeah.
Fashion management, around those search terms as well.
Yeah. So you're right, and actually the universities are a good example of the typical way that we would approach SEO for your universities. You've got the generic phrases, which obviously University in London, American University in London is the USP, and all of the variations of that. So those are the generic phrases you want to drive to home pages. But then you've got you're going to have these sort of schools, almost, the school hubs, and then the individual courses that underpin them. And so there will be different categories of search phrases that we will be, our team will be targeting, or in an SEO strategy you would target, and you've got to build these content hubs. So last week we were talking about website and structure and how to structure the content and site maps. So if you have a well-designed site in terms of its architecture, it makes SEO more or easier and more effective, because you can have these, you've got the home page, which is a generic landing page, and you've got all of these sub landing pages, which are gateways into specific areas of content. In your case, it's going to be the actual subject areas. So
can I ask a question, Elliot? You said, SEO should generate more traffic than paid advertising. This is the ultimate goal, isn't it? Because
I think
when I look at Google Analytics and you see the traffic source, should I be seeing organic should be higher than paid, right?
Yeah, I think look, it does depend on the strategy. Obviously, if you're spending a really large amount on paid, then your paid is going to be higher. So it's definitely a function of what you're being paid. But Mint Twist's typical approach to anyone who wants to grow is, look, you run both, because you can get quick results with paid advertising broadly, search and the rest. But if you running SEO in parallel, the SEO is going to grow significantly. And at some stage, if you're a university, there's obviously a limited number of people you can take, and I know quality is important as well. But at some stage, if you're in control of of the sort of your recruitment cycle in this case, then you can start to potentially reduce paid advertising and just maintain SEO. And depending on how developed you are from an SEO perspective, if you're completely optimized, for example, for a certain subject area, you can almost put that one in maintenance mode and then put the focus on other strategic objectives, i.e. other subject areas or new subject areas.
Okay.
Yeah. So SEO for a university like you guys, it's a big project because you've got a big site and there's lots of content. You're going after lots of different audiences. But yeah, look, long term, we want you would want SEO traffic to be your primary objective, and then advertising is the cream on the top. Should we come to Mariona?
Yeah, so I think actually our case is not that different from Alice's in that, well, I mean, we do have different topics that we cover. So then for the landing page of the association, obviously you've got words like IGMA but then you've got the main things that people tend to visit us for. So a lot of concepts related to green bond principles, social bonds, sustainability finance, repo, GMRA, that kind of thing. Then you go into each of the sections of the association, you've got the same. Now in education, for the landing page, we've got things like IGMA education, we found, and that was something that I think the agency that is doing this is the one that we've got the website with, but I think with both them and with the word search we did for the Google Ads with you guys, we're finding that fixed income certificate, fixed income course are the terms that tend to perform best. But then we've got a lot of courses that are on slightly different topic areas, and at the moment we're not looking at those, but I think once we go on a page by page basis, we will probably start entering them, things like that capital markets, primary, or then on others, repo. But yeah, I think our case is similar to what Alice was saying in that, or what you just said, that they have like different faculties. In our case, we've got different topics that we touch on. So that's my view. I don't know if Mark would agree.
Yeah, I do. No, that was a good summary. My only thing that I was going to add was a reasonably, it might be an interesting kind of topic of conversation here, because for what we do, when we started working with an external marketing agency, which was Mint Twist, and we started about a year ago, up until this point, we'd never done any external marketing. Right, all of our marketing had been done through mailings to internal databases, and we're lucky that we've got a very big internal database to approach, and that was always very good. And so when we started with the external stuff, and we were looking for keywords of what we did, and we thought, okay, well, what we work in that is referred to internally is something called the primary market, the secondary market. And we pretty quickly realized that whilst we use these terms internally and we were putting these on our ads, they weren't necessarily the same terms that people externally were using to search, right? So when we talk about the secondary market, most other people talk about fixed income. Right, so because it's basically people on the buy and sell side buying these type of products, fixed income products. They don't necessarily refer to it as a secondary market. And the same thing with when people who want to issue bonds, issuers and investors who are looking at issuers who are looking to issue bonds. Internally, we call this the primary market, but they may not call it that. They may call it debt capital markets, for example, or DCM. And so we had to kind of have a look at what we were doing and change quite a bit of our wording to reflect what other people thought as opposed to what we used internally. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But
yeah, that is why it is interesting, but it's also like it's a really relevant point, because what we're going to talk about in a minute is sort of the basics of how to actually do this stuff. And what Google's saying, that because obviously I said 20 years ago it's really basic, just about backlinks. Now it's Google wants to reward the people who are genuinely creating the best content, and what best content means, the most relevant in terms of what the user, the person initiating search is actually what they want the answer to, or what they want to find out about. And so the way that Google does that is, yes, the search term is really, really important, but actually the semantically linked phrases, linked phrases that are related to that term, if there's a good collection, a holistic collection of relevant phrases on that particular page, then that's a really good thing. So, you mentioned some technical terms there from your industry that I'm struggling to remember, but debt capital market is the same as primary market.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely right.
Okay, so if you're saying, and the question you said was absolutely right. So we definitely need to reflect what people are actually searching for. So go back to Brian's question right at the start. He's right. If we're trying to target British people, we want to use the British phrase. If we're trying to target American people, we want to use the American phrase. In your case, if we're targeting people who are searching for in that way, we've got to use the phrase they're going to be using. Having said that, we can use the semantically related technical secondary market phrase within the context of that page. And that is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. But we definitely need to be clear about what the key phrase is. And then we keep that key phrase in mind when we're building the title and the H1 and the first paragraph. And I'll talk about how it feeds into metadata and other things in just a moment. Okay, so in this next section, I'm going to go through this quite a lot, but I figured just based on how it went Monday, which was really good. It's kind of, I think it will be good for me just to go through all of this stuff. Do ask a question as we go through. Definitely, please do ask a question as you go through. I would like that, and/or just note them down, and we'll speak at the end. So this chunk that I'm going to do now is essentially the last chunk, and then we'll go into sort of chat, and then we'll be finished on time or early today. But before I go into this section, is there any questions around search phrases and what you should do or don't want to do?
I actually have a question, Elliot, if that's okay. And I've got kind of like a point and then a question. But just to go back to Mark's point around internal and external, that's definitely something that we're going through at the moment, because we very much see our particular product that I look after, so Kinto Join, as a corporate carpooling platform, and so does all Toyota globally. That's what we know it as, because that's how we've defined it. But the reality is, if you're a day-to-day employee or a consumer, chances are you would call that car sharing. And to us internally, car sharing is a completely different Kinto product that's got, it's a different app. And that's something that we really need to get our heads around, to understand actually how we differentiate between those two products that we offer, because we're going to end up with getting people on the wrong sites. So yeah, just a point to say that actually it's happening in our industry as well. And it's probably true of most industries.
Yeah. Look, it's definitely a really good point you're making, because you're right. Corporate carpooling and car sharing, it's going to, in the minds of most consumers at the moment, it's kind of lumped together. I know you've done some research, and we've had internal conversations about that. So probably in the short and medium term, you're going to have to almost compete with some of those consumer focused players. So that the question really is, to what extent are we going to use SEO to do that? My feeling is that it's always best to be absolutely clear about what your key generic terms are. And it might not be exactly corporate carpooling, but carpooling connected with any phrase that's referencing anything to do with business or organizations or work or corporate, would be really, really important, so that in the end, in the future, when corporate carpooling is much more widely understood than it is today, that we're going to dominate that position, we're going to own that position, and we won't be drawn into competing with some of the really big, globally known B2C players that already have a big footprint for the more generic term of car sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I did just have one question, Elliot, which was around, and I don't know if this is the right word for it, but obviously we had our Faxi website, and we've now got our Kinto Join website. So it was just a question as to whether or not you kind of build equity, like SEO equity, and if you do within a website and you then change, is it possible to take that equity and somehow migrate it over to a new site?
Yes, and yes, and also I did mention it to Matthew as well, but but yeah, look, you can do that, and you should do that, because if you build up a website, it will, even if you're not actively doing SEO, it will organically be ranked, certainly for branded search terms. And in order to take them over, when you build a new site, you can build a new site however you want, but in order to take the SEO juice across, you create something called 301 redirects. That's just a fancy term for a few files that tell the Google search engine, this page that you used to rank for this particular, or this page that you used to rank, and it would be ranked for certain key phrases, it now lives over here. So it's like a pointer, it's like an indexing file that sits on your website server that tells the search engine, that was the old page, this is a new one, please keep the juice onto that new one, and then you retain the ranking. An SEO migration is for anyone who's ever going to redesign or rebuild your website, that is a component of rebuilding and or redesigning a website.
Elliot, just a quick question. When sometimes you get to a, I've always wondered about this. You'll be looking something up and you'll get to a web page and it'll say something along the lines of bad 301 pathway, or is that basically what's happened? So it's gone to a page which has tried to redirect to another page, and that somehow that link or that pathway is wrong or broken. Is that what that means?
Yeah, well, there's lots of different errors, but the bad 301 redirect will mean Google's encountered something that tells it where a new page is, but when it goes to look for it, it doesn't find it. The more typical one is 404, which means the page is just gone. Which is also, if that's off the back of an organic search, then that's a bad thing, because whoever is that website owner, they either change. We spoke about page deletion, didn't we, last week? So you might intentionally delete a page, but it's unlikely you would delete pages that have any sort of meaningful ranking. So if you're clicking through, I'm getting a bit technical already here, but if you do a search and a page is ranking in the first page, and you as a consumer, as a customer, I'm saying now, are interested in seeing what's on that page, it implies that it shouldn't have been deleted, and if it was changed, it should have had a 301 redirect. So,
right. Okay. Yeah. No. I was just wondering. As soon as you said that phrase, something clicked, and I was just actually wanted to check.
Yeah. So we spoke. Look, like I say, it's a big topic, but an SEO audit will look at lots of things, but broken links and missing pages by themselves is not necessarily a problem. But if they're broken links or missing pages that have SEO value, then it's a problem. And if you fix it quick enough, you can retain that SEO value. If you don't, at some stage, the Google index will just delete the page.
Elliot, I have a question when it comes to key terms, and I'm not sure if it's an odd one, but one thing I keep trying to look at, information about SEO. I'm just trying to know what is the right balance of how much detail and how many terms you have in each of the pages. And because for us, it's the first time we do it, I mean, I always refer back to management, but I always think, are we doing enough? Am I overdoing it? Am I overthinking it? I never know what the right balance is to make sure we've got best performance.
So if you've got a page talking about debt capital markets is our most important phrase. I would say, 3, 4, 5 times. If you do it too much, it's called keyword stuffing. In the olden days, you could mention it 25 times and you'll go higher. But for a long time now, it's been called keyword stuffing. So definitely use it in the right places. I'm going to show you that in a moment. And use it in the text, but don't, 3, 4, 5 times. If it reads weird, to you, then it's probably too much. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, but also, I mean, like when you put the key terms on the back end of the website, you can put the key terms through by which that page should be indexed, right? Yeah,
you can, but the tags, I'm not talking about the tags, I'm talking about the visible text here, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there any other questions? Okay. We will be talking about that exact point, Mariona, in just a moment. So feel free to ask again when we get to that slide. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about, how to rank. But remember, we're just skimming the surface here. I'll try and give you. So I've mentioned this already. Technical SEO is the structure of the site from a programmatic perspective, but also like the country that it's located in is a thing. How fast it loads, is a thing. Is it mobile responsive is a thing, and there's lots of low level sort of technical checks that need to be run. Offsite is the links into the website, which, as we've said, that's typically SEO agency territory, and then as is technical, and then on site, which is also SEO agency territory, but this is the bit where we can have a positive impact, and that's, I think, what Mariona was referring to there, when you're actually creating content. So look, sorry, this slide is one for you to sort of take away and look if you want to read it. This is a very famous infographic. It's been around for a while now, but it's still reasonably relevant. Now, all of these things here on this side are all of the the key on-page SEO factors, and all of these things here are all of the key off-page SEO factors. Now remember, there's thousands, if not tens of thousands of indexes. So these are kind of top level things. But what you mentioned just there, Mariona, your question was about how many times do we put in the most important key phrase. This thing here is called stuffing. Forgive me, I'm not quite sure what the VS stands for. VS, do you excessively use words that you want pages to be found for? So if you stuff, you actually get a negative point from an algorithm. So it's -1. If you write quality content, which means it's well, it means that, again, there's lots of indicators that go into quality, but are you writing, does your article have lots of semantically linked words? Is it a reasonable size? Is it, because if it's just like a couple of lines, that's not good quality. It implies that you just put up a page for no reason. So the quality is really important, and it means a lot of things. But you know, if we get the quality right, it has a big positive impact on the SEO score for that particular page. Offsite SEO, you know, social sharing is a thing. If that content is shared, you know, that's a positive indicator from SEO, and obviously that's an offsite activity, sharing that link. You know, there's various tactics that were historically used. No SEO agency in their right mind would use them anymore, because if you use those tactics, you will get a spam score, and that will negatively impact your SEO. And yeah, this is an infographic that you can read at your leisure if you nighttime reading. Okay, optimizing content for SEO. Let's talk about the on-page stuff then. So as we said, the quality is really important. So when we're creating a page inside our content management system, particularly if it's an important hygiene page, as we sort of mentioned, but even if it's a blog article, if we're writing a blog article, there's probably, it's going to be about a topic. So even if we don't have an SEO strategy, if in our minds we've got an idea of the phrase that we believe is relevant to the topic, and relevant to the topic that we're writing about, and something that our target sort of audiences would want to search and be informed about, then have that source anchor keyword in your mind, and then we'll see in the next sort of slides how we would use that keyword. You know, and these other things here are really talking about, you know, just the normal things you do, right? You know, write content that people will like, write people that people will want to share. And if it is a blog article, again, as we said last week, if you remember, if we're writing a blog article about what it's like for, you know, American 20-year-olds to come and live in London, or we're talking about, you know, the scene in London, then what page do we want to link to inside our Richmond University page? Is it going to be, you know, there's probably going to be a land, I'm guessing, you know, forgive me, I can't remember offhand, there's going to be an area of that site which is kind of about the life in London stuff, and there might be a primary page on that site that we would want to link from that particular blog article to that particular page with a relevant phrase that's relevant to that particular page. So it's in our minds, we want to think one page equals, you know, one or more relevant key phrases go with each page in an ideal world. Obviously, there will be phrases that we use across our site, and that's perfectly okay, and that's good even. But when we're creating a new page, you know, what's the main phrase we're thinking about? Okay. So when we've got, you know, when we've got that phrase in our mind, and so for a digital agency, it's digital marketing. So when we create the page title, and in most of our content management systems, when we create a page, there's going to be a title box where we put the title. We kind of, in normal terms, we do want to put the key phrase in the title, and ideally it's going to be leftmost, because Google always reads left to right. And the page title is one of the most important indicators to the algorithm what that page is about. Therefore, we definitely want our key phrase in there. Similarly, the URL, so the actual URL. So if our phrase is American University in London, American hyphen university hyphen, we wouldn't put the in. You don't need the joiner words, just hyphen London, American hyphen university hyphen London. So hyphens to denote the space between the words, and the URL is after the page title, pretty much the second most important, really important. So Alice asked about the meta description. So the meta description, and by the way, this is a graphic of a search result. So if you searched digital marketing and this result came up, this is what you would see. You would see the page title, which you can click on to go and visit it. You would see the URL, which you can also click on, and you would see the meta description. The meta description used to be used by the algorithm, but it is no longer a ranking factor. So if you put, it doesn't really matter if you put digital marketing there or not, it doesn't make a difference. Where the meta description is still really, really important from an SEO perspective is if you're running a search for anything and you see the top 3 results, you might be tempted to click on the result number 1, but if result number 3 has a better meta description that's more relevant, that's more importantly more related to what you're actually searching for, there is a significant chance, if it's significantly better, that you'll click on result 3, at least initially, as opposed to result 1. So meta description it's almost like your opportunity to sell, and remember, you're selling to the person who's run the search that you believe that page should be optimized for, if that makes sense. And then because of what Hannah said, and Hannah's absolutely right, if there are, in large numbers, and by the way, Hannah, I didn't ask the first part of your question. You said, does it need to be unique people? Yes, it does need to be unique people. If one person clicks on a page 1,000 times, it's not as good as 1,000 people clicking on that page after search, and Google does see that. So the meta description is going to motivate a higher click-through rate from the search results page, and that will in turn feed back into the score for that page. So meta description indirectly positively affects SEO, but not directly. The page title, as we've said, that's pulled through from the results. And then the H1 tag, which is the header, the main header of a page. Again, this is a blog article here, but if we were clicking through into digital marketing page, you would want to have digital marketing in the main header, in the H1. And by the way, a web page, for it to be HTML compliant, should only have one header, only have one H1. If you have more than one, it's seen as a bad HTML, which will negatively impact your score a little bit.
Sorry, can I ask you something?
Yes.
The title, does it need to be the same? I mean, the title of the page title that you find on Google, and then the actual title when you click on the page, does it need to be the same, or you can hide it somehow? It's just to searching purposes. I don't know if you get what I mean.
Yeah, no, I do. No, I do. So the actual page title is a tag on a web page that if you've got a content management system, it will typically have a title. So whatever you put in there, it's going to get pulled onto the results page. The right. H1 is slightly different, Flavio. So the H1 will be once you actually get into the body of the text.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So and there you can obviously be a bit more descriptive.
Right.
You can go a bit longer if you want. Well, not necessarily, but so the answer to your question is it doesn't have to be the same. But what I'm really saying is, if you want to optimize that page for SEO as well as you can, the H1 would have the key phrase somewhere in there, and ideally leftmost. The page title definitely has it in there, and the URL definitely has it in there.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. I think I sort of spoke through this stuff. Page titles, are really important. And we can sort of dig in more at the end because there's a bit more content I want to get through. Meta descriptions, as we said, not a direct SEO factor, but indirectly they work. Just remember the search results page will show up to 160 characters. I don't think it goes more than that, even though you can enter more in most CMSs. And then we've mentioned H1, but they're also H2. So H2 is subheading, and then H3 is subheading. So these things also have an impact on SEO. But as I mentioned, the most important one, page title, second most URL, third most H1, and then really it's the body of the text. Okay, so if I just talk now about a mini approach to optimizing a page, let's say. Now, I'm definitely not suggesting that you kind of go away and ask all the people doing content to do this, but it's just it's an FY. It's so that you know sort of the process. So I said have in your mind an example, of the keywords. In an ideal world, you're going to have a keyword strategy, and there are going to be keywords that are predetermined for the most important pages on your site. So keyword research produces a keyword strategy, and then LSI. This is the I've forgotten what the L and the I stand for, but these are the semantically linked keywords that are linked to your primary keywords, and these are the ones that you would use in the body of the text. Okay, so the primary keyword and alternative keywords, they're going to come from that research, and then you write your content as you all should. Content is for real world users, and we want to sort of write it in that way. And then we can do the metadata optimization, which is the stuff I was talking about then. So the tags areas, and I'll talk about a few more as we get into it. So keyword research, sorry, just in the on your screens, could you just put your hands up if you've seen anything like this sort of output? So keyword research, there's lots of different tools that you can use, that SEO agencies will use. Some of them are, well, most of them are relatively, really good and really powerful and all the rest of it. But broadly, they're going to all pull out the similar sorts of things. It's going to be a list of keywords that's related to a source keyword that you put in here. And it's going to give you two things. It's going to give you the volume, and the volume means how many unique people on an average month in the country that you specified have made that search on Google, and it will tell you on Google. Obviously, it can't look at Bing and Yahoo and the other search engines. So that's the volume. And then the difficulty is a aggregated score that's looking at all of the other pages and their technical SEO score, their page score, and their content scores, and it's aggregating them about how hard it will be to overtake them. So it's a relative number, and the idea really is that obviously you look at, depending on the site, you might look at thousands of key phrases for the different sort of groups in your site or hubs or topics, and then you look and you find the best opportunity from a difficulty versus relevancy perspective. Now, there are certain phrases that you're going to want to go for, regardless, but then you've got a whole big second batch of phrases that, that we could go for, but we need an offsite SEO strategy and an on-site strategy working in harmony to grow those sort of middle level opportunities where we might be sitting on page 2 and we've got an opportunity to get to page 1 and then to the top 3 positions, and over time you execute a strategy to do that. But it all starts with this keyword research, and these are some of the tools. Now, if just for those of you who are interested, if you Google answer the public, that's a lot of that's open, and free. And if you Google keywords tool, a lot of that's open and free. So if you've got people who are creating content, there are some tools out there that that give you a good sort of insight into keyword volumes for a given market. So if any of you are interested in finding out these tools, ask your Minterest account manager and they'll just send you a list. Okay, let's see so LSI is latent semantic indexing. So that's Google's way of saying, we're going to, when we look at a page, we're not only going to look at what a page is about, but the more latently semantically related phrases that we find on that page, it's their way, it's in part their way of looking at how quality a piece of content is. So what we mean by this is, if we're writing about English breakfast tea, and that's that's the primary phrase that this page is talking about. If the more of these semantically related phrases that we use, the more Google's going to infer that this page is actually a well-researched piece of content that should be relevant for that user. So Google, using access to all of the data that it's got, which is basically all the websites and pages in the world that it indexes, which is virtually all of them, is built up a database to aggregate all of these topics and all of the related phrases. So it uses its own data to mark any given page versus all of the competitors that are going after the same topic. And then it will, in the context of LSI scoring, it will rank them accordingly. So, if you don't choose keywords that your customers are searching for, you won't be found in the results. But Google scans different components of your site to find keywords. So once it finds keywords that are semantically related to your core phrase, that's going to positively impact your optimization for that phrase. And as we've sort of already touched on, title tag is really important, URL, the actual content itself. The other tags that are available to us, certainly from a content management system, the main one for me that I always sort of to talk to people about is when you've got the opportunity to upload an image or even a video that you're embedding. When you do that inside content management systems, they'll typically pop up these sort of boxes, and there will be an image title tag and an image description, an image alt tab. And quite often it's sort of tempting just to sort of either not put anything in them or just quickly write something because you're in a hurry and you just want to save the page and move on to your next task. But those image tags, and tags for anything you're embedding really, but images is a common one. They if you put in the core phrase into those tag areas, then it will again positively reinforce that particular page for that particular to rank for that particular result. The other benefit you get is, remember, Google also has the image tab, and actually it will score images also based specifically on that tagging. So increasingly that's an opportunity to get more exposure in terms of people who are searching for relevant content. And even if our image is not showing for whatever reason, you can get the metadata. So metadata is important. When you go over an image and you hover over it, the alt text will be displayed. It's important for screen readers, for people who have visual impairments, and it makes a web page more accessible in the broader sense, and not just more accessible from a search exposure sense. Okay, so I've spoken about external links. So we've got the basics. So let me just build on it a little bit more. So if we're saying that a particular page is about, well, it doesn't matter what it's about. And we've said that if that page has external sites linking to it, meaning from the BBC News, there's a link to this landing page, and from Minterest.com, there's a link to this particular page. It doesn't matter if it's a landing page or whatever page it is. We're saying that Google's going to find those links, because remember, it's crawling every site, so it knows about those links. And it's saying that if it's coming from a website, from a web page in that website that's semantically related to the content that's on the page that it's linking to, then that's a good thing. That's going to be a positive indicator for Google that page is good because it's got a backlink. But remember I mentioned that the technical SEO, so broadly technical SEO feeds into something called domain rating. So domain rating is a score from 0 to 100, and it's something like if you've got a score over 50, then you're in like the top 10% of websites in the world. So it's kind of algorithmic, because you get nearer to 100, you get like hardly, I'm not even sure if there is a page that's 100. I think Google's 99 or something like that. Facebook 98, that type of thing. So BBC News will be about 91 or 92 or something like that. So that's going to have a really high domain rating. You know, Mint Twist, I don't know, is about 50. It's a lower domain rating. So domain rating, it's about, normally it's related to how big and how widely used your site. So it's not the only factor, but it's the main one. It needs to be a really big site. So clearly a link from a really big site is worth much more than a link from a medium site, which is worth more than a link from a lower value site. So not all external links are equal. But as long as it's an external link from a non-spammy page, then you're going to get a boost in authority. One of the spam tactics is you can build spammy links very easily, but that, as we saw earlier on, will actually negatively impact the destination page. So if a destination page has links to it from spammy pages, part of an upfront piece of work for an SEO project might be to remove those links, which can be done by Webmaster Tools. So we'll just leave some time for conversation. I'll just give you a few more sort of points to note. Sorry, I've thrown a lot at you, I'm conscious. But I just wanted to make one thing clear. If you've got two sites that are exactly the same, site A and site B, if site A has blog posts with internal links that link, let's say a page, a particular page in site A, if it has blog posts and they can be on-site and or off-site external links as well, because it's got links coming into it, that will make that particular page in that particular site, if all else was equal, this would rank higher than site B. Just to clarify the point, because some of you might be asking, an internal link from one of our own blog articles that's on our own page to our own service or product page is not as valuable as a link that's coming from an external page. In fact, it's not really close. It is valuable, but not as valuable as external linking. I just want to give a really quick overview of how an SEO, because obviously I've been throwing a lot at you, but like I mentioned at the start, the truth is that to do SEO properly, you probably, it's still a specialist area. As a marketing team, we can set ourselves up to help the whole thing work. But in general, you start with the audience research really right at the start, and then feeds into keyword research, because what are people actually searching for and in what volumes? Then you look at the competitors, because as we've seen, there would be other websites going for trying to rank for similar phrases, and they might not necessarily be real world competitors. In some cases they're not, but they will be competing for those top pages for certain phrases that we'll be going for. If we can look at competitors using the tools I referred to earlier, you can see you can see lots of things, but one of the main things you can see is where are they building external links from? First of all, how are they ranking for the phrases that we're going after? Where are they getting their links from? What's their domain rating? So if we can understand where we sit versus our competitors, we can do the things that they're doing well to lift us up. If we see that they're missing a trick, or they're missing a trick and competitor B is doing that trick, we can make use of that opportunity, and you can start to have an idea. You can see how many links, how many backlinks they've got. If they've got 20, then we can assume if we get 21 of a similar quality, then we might overtake them. So you can have quite an objective idea after you've done these first two steps about what phrases you can realistically go after, given the knowledge that you now have about the competition. And so once you decide which phrases you're going to go after, that kind of feeds into the content strategy, because if we've got a whole bunch of topics here that we know we can compete for, well, it means we kind of need some content as the fuel to be able to go and build the on-site value that we need. But we also can potentially use that same content to build external links, which is the entry points here. And then it's an ongoing process really of content creation and optimization and backlink building. And that's how an SEO project works. Typically these three, this first part is kind of a one-off upfront piece, and then the rest of it is ongoing work. Right, the last slide before we go into questions. I just want to give you this because it's interesting. There's something called featured snippets. So, and you'll probably notice when you run a search on Google now, quite often you're going to see supplementary bits of information depending on the search that you write. For example, some of you might have seen, if you type in something really specific, like how to tie shoelaces, Google will render a video, typically a YouTube video, but not only, and not only will it show you the video, it will actually show you, this little arrow here is the point in the video that Google has determined that it gives you the actual core bit of detail that you need in order to learn how to tie a shoelace. And so this is an example of a featured snippet, because this is not a classic search result. It's Google using its own, Google's building up knowledge of the world, and it's using that to rank search engine results, but it's also using it to try and get discrete answers to specific questions, so that instead of pointing you to a website, it can just give you the answer to its question. Some of you might know that Google's kind of stated objective is something along the lines of, you know, knowing exactly what you want even before you know it, based on its understanding of your behavior and all the rest of it. And this is the first step on that journey. It's like giving you a direct answer to a direct question. How to change a tire, instead of just giving you the page and telling you to click onto it, it's actually pulling out the bits of content that are in that page. This is content from that page, but it's giving you a numbered list that tells you the steps of changing a car. Now, the other thing, let me just drop out of this slide just now. Let's go, oops, not that one. Right, so if I let's go to this one first. If I say who is ICMA, it's going to, the top level answer, this is a featured snippet here. So yes, there's a link to ICMA group, you know, as you would expect. This is a branded search. We've used the ICMA in the search terms. You would expect this to come up here. But actually, what it's done, it's pulled this bit of text out of the About ICMA page, and it's presenting that as a direct answer to a direct question. And this is a featured snippet. Now, the other thing to know is if you at home, or I now just put this microphone on and you spoke that into the search results, it's going to speak this answer to you. So featured snippets are also what's going to drive the future of a voice search that we sort of touched on last week. Another example is American University in London. Well, thankfully, luckily, we're ranking #1, but that's obviously a paid result there. This is probably something most of you have seen. Again, this stuff is featured snippets. So it's giving you semantically related questions, and it's pulling data from pages that it thinks gives the best answer to those questions. This is not, you know, exactly the same. This is something slightly related called knowledge graph. But all of this, you know, this is obviously a map showing you some universities. But all of these results, they're called featured snippets, but SEO people are referring to them these days as what we call page 0 results, because it's extra exposure that you can get on the first page of a search result without having necessarily to be in the top 10 organic search results. And featured snippets are going to become an increasingly widely used feature, and that is the end of the chunk. So sorry, like I said, I've now threw a lot at you there. Are there any questions or comments?
When you see the people also ask, and there are 4 or 5 different questions there, Google takes it from the main website they found, you said, doesn't it? So where does Google find the answers, basically?
Yeah, so you'll typically see that if you ask a question inside Google, Google's going to remember, it's building up this index of everything that everyone cites. It's going to say, here's a related question, and the answer, the best answer we've found to that related question is this chunk of text from this particular website. Now remember, that's not something that someone in Google has just sat there and just decided that that's the best answer. That is the algorithm that we've sort of been touching on here. It's working out what is the best answer. Moreover, it might decide tomorrow there's another website which has a better score, that's better set up, it's better structured, it gives a better answer to the same question. So it's not a static thing. This is Google, this is AI, this is artificial intelligence powered stuff here. But we obviously, you know, we understand Google shares how, like, broadly how the algorithm works broadly with the SEO community. So you kind of know broadly what to do, but the broad guidance for us as marketers, and actually for anyone, is to write the right content, and it's focused around a specific key phrase and or question and semantically related phrases.
Thanks.
Elliot, I have a question. Going back to the blog content, which is great, yes, writing blogs and posting blogs, which we do, like, for past 3 months, it has really increased with our students. And like every other week, we get a blog and we put it on our website. We have one page specifically dedicated to blogs and also posted on social media. But what I'm missing is, like, what's the result really? You know, it's I don't have any. It's not really tangible. Or do I need to go into Google Analytics and see what's happening to this page?
Yeah, I mean,
you always say, "Oh, great! You know, it's great. We have another blog is coming. It's great." But what does that actually mean? All these blogs are coming in.
Yeah. Just to say, I will answer the question directly, but in the last week, we're going to talk about analytics, and we will spend a section where we'll look at the value of blog pages. So, but to answer your question properly, if they're well written over time, they will rank for normally long tail searches, and they will act as landing pages into your site. So remember at the start, I said SEO is about increasing your footprint. So blog pages is a great way of increasing your footprint. Some blog pages, as you'll see, we write a blog article about every 2 weeks. We've got some that are 5 years old that are still bringing in significant numbers of traffic. It's not necessarily highly converting traffic, but it's a big positive signal for SEO. So that's one thing. But the other thing, you know, I touched on it in there, but it's an opportunity for us to build internal links to the hygiene pages. And so if you can, when you make an article, think about look at the opportunities to link to several or 3 or 4 hygiene pages. Obviously, it needs to be a natural connection, not shoehorned in. But that's the opportunity. And then, look, it's not related to SEO, but it's related to conversion marketing, which is what we were talking about last week. Remember the call to action on a blog page. Come and, you know, check out our open day or download a prospectus. You can have the call to actions in the blog articles as well. So it's those 3 things. Really
you see, but we don't have, it's a call to action in the blog.
Yeah, you should do.
Students, they write blogs about their experience or whatsoever, but we don't have actually the call to action there.
Yeah,
okay.
It will help, you know, relevant call to action at the top and bottom.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Does anyone, Mariana, it looks like you have a question.
Sorry, no, I don't. I thought this was very, very interesting. And I mean, my only question is, can we have the full recording at some point so I can share it with my working group?
So the LinkedIn page, have you seen it? It stays on there.
I've seen the recordings. I wasn't sure if it was just a snippet or the full.
No, I've been cutting out the front. I've been cutting out the starts, but it is the whole thing. I think in week one, my technology cut out halfway through, so it ended up being 2 parts. But it's all of them are there, and they'll stay there. I won't remove them. I don't think LinkedIn will.
I think you know, I found that really, really interesting. And I was taking notes, and I've got a couple of things, Mariana, to do this, Mariana, which is quite cool. But you know, the idea of having a keyword strategy, you know, just this idea, and then that's obviously linked to the LSI keywords. So even I go, okay, well, we've got course X, and course X falls into category A. So you're thinking, okay, well, what are the keywords for course X? And then what are all the LSI keywords, you know, phrases around that? And then how do you sort of position that within the page? And then if you're going to do any hub content, you know, how do you incorporate both the keywords and the LSI words into that hub content and link that back into, do you know what I mean? It's yeah, I mean, it was fascinating. It's one of those things you realize how much work you actually got to do, you know.
I was going to say, one of the things is that you realize you can do so much that at some point you have to also think, okay, well, realistically, what are the things that I absolutely need to do? What are the things that I can afford to do as well? But you could just keep going and going.
Yeah. So look, I mean, you can't clearly. We've all got a number of things to do. So it's about. Look, I mean, I wanted to, you know, when we do these courses, want to give you enough information, but obviously there is a lot to do, but it's not, you don't have to, it's great to do if you've got the resources, but you know, it's about priorities, isn't it?
But that's, look, I mean, that's all business, right? Everyone has finite resources and we all have to learn to allocate our resources most effectively. But I think this was genuinely really interesting stuff, and I think there is a lot to go on. I was actually just thinking about the blogs again and thinking, would having YouTube content have the same sort of effect as blogs?
So yeah, like in short, yes. So YouTube's obviously owned by Google, but you know, and that's part of the reason. But if you embed YouTube, and there's something called YouTube SEO now. So if you've got YouTube content and a YouTube channel, you can optimize it for SEO because there's obviously videos rank, but also it can definitely positively impact the main site, and it does increasingly.
Okay. Well, because that's something that's a project that I'm going to be working on the next few weeks with someone else, and creating a bunch of content that will eventually, as well as sitting on our webpage, will also sit on YouTube, and there'll be links between. So it was interesting to see that kind of the power of the link, I suppose, more than anything else.
Yeah. It goes back to what we were saying at the start, Mike. It's like SEO, like it's becoming quite sort of all encompassing. So it's almost any content you're putting out onto the web, it can, one way or another, it can positively impact the SEO of your main site.
Right.
Okay. Any questions from anyone else? All right. Look, we finished exactly on time. So thank you so much for a really enjoyable session. Good evening, everyone. I guess it's good morning or good day for you, Brian. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you next week. If anyone wants to chat, I'll stay on as always, but otherwise I'll see you next week.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elliot. Thanks.
What are we having next week, Elliot?
Yeah.
Topic.
I actually can't remember.
Edit this part out.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.